following paid commercial program is brought to you by TD Wealth.
Welcome to Money Talk. I'm Kim Parley. Thanks so much for joining us. Chips or semiconductors, those tiny processors that power everything from your dishwasher to your phone to the military, have arguably become the most important technology in the modern world. So much so that they're often called the new oil. And like oil, semis have defined how businesses work and how world politics are evolving. And the stakes couldn't be higher. Chris Miller is the author of New York Times bestseller Chip War, which the Times calls a non-fiction thriller, equal parts The China Syndrome and Mission Impossible. And the Financial Times named it its 2022 Business Book of the Year. I spoke earlier with Chris about his book and about the state of the global chip industry. Here's that interview. I want to just start off by thanking you for writing this book. It was highly informative. I think it sheds light on something that's pretty profound for the world to understand, and it's complicated. And I think you do a great job of, telling the narrative that it's interesting. I want to start with the basics around, if I could, the juxtaposition of size. You've got an enormous scale in terms of chips are in everything, and I think people would be surprised to hear how much is produced, to the microscopic precision it takes to create a chip when these are like, it's tinier than viruses. So it just gives a sense of kind of the size component.
Well, if you go to a store and buy a new smartphone, just the primary chip on that phone will have carved into its silicon around 15 or 20 billion transistors, little switches that flip circuits on and off. And each one of these circuits, as you say, is the size of a coronavirus. And so this is manufacturing on a minute scale, really unparalleled in the level of precision when it comes to the manufacturing required. There's nothing else that comes close. If you look at all their facets of the economy, there is nothing that has required this precision and that requires such a complex supply chain to produce it.
And on the other side, they're in everything, as you mentioned. And I think that one of the numbers in the book you talk about is there's 1 trillion in terms of the number of transistors or semis made every year, and that there's more transistors made in a year that are made of any other good in any other place ever by mankind.
Well, that's right. And we barely even realize the ways that we rely on semiconductors today, but they are in everything. It's not just your smartphone or your computer, things that you associate with technology. It's also your dishwasher and your microwave and your coffee maker. A new car will often have 1,000 semiconductors inside of it. Today, basically everything with an on-off switch has chips inside, and that's made the entire world economy more reliant than ever on access to semiconductors.
More reliant, as you mentioned, on semiconductors. And on that, you talk about how, the fact that these can get made in the way they're made is in your words, a triumph of efficiency. But you talk about it's also a staggering vulnerability. And I'd like to dig in on that one.
Well, to eke out the efficiency gains that the chip industry has produced year after year has required concentration of production because there are huge economies of scale in the chip industry. And so in many segments of the semiconductor supply chain, there's just a couple of firms that have the scale needed to produce efficiently. And if you look at the manufacturing of advanced processor chips, the type of chips that you find inside your smartphone, for example, there's just one company, Taiwan's Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, that produces 90% of the most advanced chips. That's 90%, a staggering market share that is really unparalleled in any other segment of advanced manufacturing.
Can you if we could pull on that a little bit. And I mean, this really, your whole book talks about the history and how this came to be and all the players involved. And again, it's fascinating. But the result of how this has played out comes back to this vulnerability piece and the fact that you've got this all concentrated in one area. How does that affect geopolitics right now? What do people need to understand about the history of semis to understand what's playing out in the world right now?
There's two different factors that intersect when it comes to geopolitics and semiconductors. One is, as you say, the extraordinary concentration of chip making in a small number of locations and along both sides of the Taiwan Straits, chief among them. Second is the role that semiconductors play in producing military power, because the first chips were actually invented for use in missile guidance systems in the early Cold War. And since that point, access to advanced semiconductors has shaped the balance of military power.
Why does Taiwan Semiconductor dominate? What has led to that specifically, and how did that come to be?
when TSMC was founded in 1987, it had a unique business model. Before that point, almost all firms both designed and manufactured semiconductors themselves, but TSMC was founded on the idea of only manufacturing chips. It doesn't design any itself, and that's allowed it to produce chips for a very large number of companies, for Apple, for AMD, for NVIDIA, and many others, and that has let it scale to an enormous degree. Today, it's not only the world's most advanced chip maker, it's also the world's largest chip maker. And those two facts are related because the more chips you produce, the more data you gather about your chip making techniques, and the more you can hone them to make sure they're as accurate and precise as possible.
Tell me, what does that mean for, again, current world where you've got the U.S., we have the CHIPS Act, and you've got different things going on, but the U.S. is trying to stand up, I'd say, more chip manufacturing. China has been trying to stand up more chip manufacturing. How difficult is it? I mean, when you talk about the precision, the expertise that's necessary to do it, is it possible, and how long might it take?
Well, it's certainly possible to build new chip-making facilities. The question is, can you use them to produce the most cutting-edge chips in a commercially viable manner? In the U.S., there are firms that are only slightly behind TSMC in terms of their manufacturing capability, but they don't right now have the scale to compete with TSMC in as efficient a way. In China, there's far less advancement when it comes to semiconductor manufacturing capabilities. The leading Chinese firms are several generations behind TSMC, and in an era in which each generation involves exponential improvements in computing power, that leaves Chinese firms really quite far behind. And what's more, Chinese firms right now are not allowed to access the most advanced machine tools because the US, Japan, and the Netherlands, which produce these machine tools, have decided over the past several months to stop their transfer to China as part of a deliberate effort to hold back China's chip industry.
Still ahead, more of my conversation with Chris Miller, including how that advanced chip production in Taiwan he was talking about is influencing its relationship with China politically. And later, the impact of affordable childcare on employment. A new report from TD Economics looks at the availability of childcare and how it may end up defining Canada's workplace. The author of that report, Francis Fong, will be here to explain its findings. You're watching Money Talk. We'll be right back.